This is our John Deere 755 compact utility tractor. This is obviously the engine block hanging out. On this, there's a bunch of parts, and hopefully we can get all of that inside of that and get a running tractor out of this thing. If you're new to the channel, we'll explain what we're doing and why we're doing it as we go. If you've been at the channel for a while, you're probably pretty excited about this. It's been a long time coming. So what we've got here is an aftermarket rebuild kit: pistons, rings, bearings, new valves, seals, gaskets. There are some cylinder liners, but we're not going to be replacing the liners. This all came from Yanmar Diesel Service. Yanmar Diesel Service is a Yanmar fuel system authorized dealer, not the Yanmar engines, which is why they provide this with this aftermarket part, but they're Yanmar fuel system. So we have authentic Yanmar OEM injectors to put in this thing, which is exciting as well. And even though this isn't OEM, they assured me that this is OEM quality or better. So this should be some good stuff, and I'm excited to get it in this little tractor. So I just got the head back from the machine shop, and it looks awesome. We use Don's Automotive down in Tell City. They do a fantastic job. Same people. They're going to be doing the spiral staircase treads for us for the YouTube Yacht project. We do have all new valves, so we're going to be replacing the valves, and this is what I kind of want to go ahead and get together first. That way the head is done and set aside, and then we can move on to pistons, rings, rod bearings, all that fun stuff. So if you are new to the channel, the engine that was in that tractor was fine. It wasn't bad by any means at all. The reason we had to pull it out were all the engine mounts were shot, obliterated, and because of that, the main seal in the back got wobbled loose and was leaking like crazy. So we had to pull the whole engine out to replace the main seal and the engine mounts. And since we had it out, and it's only a few bolts to take this head off and see what we got going inside, since she's kind of a, I don't want to say high hour engine, but because she's got quite a few hours on her and we use the heck out of it, we decided to go ahead and just see what we had going on the inside. And honestly, everything doesn't look bad, but at that point, once you got the head off, you're just kind of at the might as well stage. So new pistons, new rings, new rod bearings, new valves, might as well. We're not changing the valve guides. So the first thing I gotta do is lap these valves. This is your disclaimer. Not a professional, not a mechanic. I'm just a guy that works on his own stuff, watches some YouTube videos online, just like you do. We've got some valve compound. We're starting pretty coarse. I think this is like a 200. And then I got some 1,000 over here that's where we'll end up with. The biggest advice I got when it came to the compound was a little goes a long way. So we just got that valve on the right done. And we're going to do this one on the left next. Here's your before of what that looks like. And that's what we're looking like after. And then once I got stuff cleaned up, I transferred it to a clean piece of cardboard, and we are ready to start putting the valves back into this thing. And then we'll get it set up on a block, and I'll show you a little trick on how someone showed me to kind of test that we did a decent job with it before we get it all put back together. Of course, you could do the compression test once it's put back together, which we will do, but before we get even that far, there's something else we can try. So I got everything in order here of how we need to go, so we are good on that. And got a little bit of oil. We're just going to dip these in oil. This is like a 15W40, a little bit heavier oil than what it calls for. But that'll be good because it'll kind of stick to it. Hold on, we're forgetting one crucial thing here. Probably ought to put those on before we put the springs on. Use this to press those seals on. Fella might be able to tap them or just push them into place, but fella also doesn't know what he's doing half the time. So well, that press is nice, smooth, and easy. I don't know if it's right, you know, but it's working. We'll start putting the springs on. And I got all the little keepers, caps inside the spring. You know, safety glasses advised, but to the left here. Give it a few taps. Make sure those keepers are locked in. But just, I don't know if this is how you magnetize something, but it appears to be. Anyway, a little magnetism on the pick certainly doesn't seem to hurt anything. The way this works is that little notch, or that little high spot right there, rides in the groove on that valve, and then just the tension from the spring holds it in place. These little compression tools are pretty inexpensive, well, anywhere. First one's not too bad because you can kind of sit it on top. Bottom one can be a little tricky because it kind of likes to fall out. So all the valves are in, everything looks good. We got her up on blocks. I got a couple clean pieces of cardboard, and I got a little bit of acetone. It's gonna be a little tricky, but we're gonna try and get these spaces here full of acetone. Something with less surface tension than water. And then we'll slide these underneath. And hopefully when we come back and check in a little bit, nothing has leaked through those valves. While we wait on that, let's see if we can get this block transferred over to the engine stand. I had a buddy pick this up for me from Harbor Freight. He was shopping on Black Friday. He said, "Aren't you looking for an engine stand?" I said, "I am." He said, "They got a heck of a deal on one right now." We can drive this new fancy rig right in here. All right, okay. Okay. Transfer it over, you know. Old piston. New piston. I've got new rings, new rod bearings, but we're reusing the connecting rods. These pistons are fine, but the kit came with new ones. Might as well use them. That's where I'm at with it. We will save these though. We do have another 755, and I want to keep this thing for a long time. The older it gets, the harder it'll be to get parts. These weren't hard to track down at all, but it will be, you know, next 10 years probably a little bit more difficult. So we'll hang on to all this stuff, but if we got the new stuff, let's go ahead and put it on. Step one, we got to get these snap rings out in here and get these pressed out and the new piston heads pressed on. Got my little bench top press here. Got a little bench top, so most of my stuff is made to come on and off of it. A little bit of extra workstation lighting. Oh, wow. So I just took a board and drilled a hole that size. And I'm thinking we can set the piston on there like that. Too high up. Handle though. How about one of those? I think I just threw it as far as I could last time we used it. I can't even find the engine hoist handle, and I just had that in my hand. Yeah. So there's a little like bushing on the inside of this as well. This, I guess we got to get that pressed out of there too. It has to be pretty accurate. Unless, in a bold move, I could press the old one out with the new one. I don't know. Well, this is what we've come up with. No way that's working. She started in and starting to push out. That's pretty wild. There's these oil holes. And I'm pretty close. I'm just a touch off. I need to see if I can't get it to twist. I was able to just put a hex in here and just kind of gently get her to rotate because we're not too far in yet. We're still pretty light on the penetration. Get our washer back up here and see if we can get it the rest of the way. That looks good. Oil holes lined up. Old one out. That's nice. That don't look bad at all. I'll take it. I'm gonna coat just a little bit of oil on it. And I'm getting everything matched up with the way it was previously with my casting number on this side and the piston facing this way. I don't know how much it matters, but I know I'm gonna get it to match. I just slide right in like butter. Yep. Yeah, oh, beautiful. Let's see, where's my new snap rings? Do it right at eye level so whenever the snap ring slips off, it'll make it harder to do it next time. There's one swapped out. When I did the 555, I just took a dead blow and a socket and tapped these out. And I think that would suffice on this as well. But since I have the press, might as well just slow and controlled press these out. If I don't have to beat the heck out of it, there's no reason to. These pistons have these dishes here, assuming to help with the combustion process one way or another. So I'm just making sure that these are lined up on the same side as the casting numbers because that's how they came off. So whenever we go to put everything back together, it's identical. So the next step is rings, and we've got all new rings for each piston. There are 3 rings on this piston, kind of just like this circus. And they go in a specific way because each ring does a different task. What are those tasks, Mike? Don't know. Somebody could probably tell you in the comments. One like wipes on the upstroke, and one's a, you know, and does that thing, you know. Could probably look it up if I wanted. Don't really want to. What I can do is absolutely match what's going on with this piston. That I can do, you know. I can match things all day long. I will say the one thing I do remember from the 555 build, there's a split in each ring, obviously, so you can get it on. And the big thing on that one, the big advice I was given, was don't stack those splits. So as we put them on the piston, we don't want to do this, where they're all stacked. We need to offset those. Other than that, I don't really remember anything. How is something that's made to go around in an engine at high temperatures thousands of times a minute so terrifying to put together? Top one. I'm gonna get these out, compare them side by side and see what the difference is because they look identical. Sometimes there's a different type of bevel. It can be hard to tell. Sometimes there's just a little bit different thickness. I'm not necessarily measuring. I'm just gonna close it on here and have a little bit of a reference. Daylight behind you. Beveled. Sure is. A lot of time, piston ring kits will come with a little diagram that will show you. Here's the best I can find. I did find some indicators on here. I didn't notice it first, and normally something like a dot or an indicator means the top side. And this one says M1, and this one says M2. So I'm gonna put M1 first and M2 second. They do make a really cool tool called a piston ring spreader. So I'm gonna try to get these pistons in. I'm gonna rub a little oil in here. A little bit of assembly grease. And then I had the castings set to go to the oil filter side. Alright, time out. So this is made to compress the rings into the grooves so you can slide the piston where it's supposed to go. I spun the crank so that it's perfectly center straight down below us. Make sure it's looking good on that rod because I don't. A little bit on the cap, and then we can put the cap on the bottom side, making sure I'm matching the castings there. If only this engine always spun over, you know. And then we're just going finger tight right now until we get them all in. Alright, what I remember from last time is if I feel a resistance, if it's taking more than a gentle tap, then I don't have something set in my ring right. So let's reset that. That one felt much better. Feel a rotator around pretty easy to the last one. We're not hammering, we're not forcing anything. It's literally just the weight of this dead blow. That's all it takes. So it's a new day. I got about an hour and I want to try to get the head on and the torque sequence, which can be a little time consuming. We got everything prepped, cleaned up on here. We got all the debris and stuff cleaned off from when we were putting the pistons in. We got a brand new head gasket that came with that overhaul kit from Area Diesel Service. And here on the computer, I've got the torque sequence because they have to go in a certain order. And then normally first stage, second stage, third stage, and then we've got all our torque specs here. We're the 3TN 72. The 45 foot-pounds will be the final. but we don't do that on the first. We go 3 rounds of this. It says put the screws in clean engine oil. This is a wet torque. I am reusing the old head bolts. There's nothing wrong with that. That should be fine. We've got them in order of operation, front of the machine, right side of the machine. So we've got this point in the right direction. Got to make sure we get this lined up right. I can see this pattern here from this on the previous gasket. And of course there are some dowels right here to help make sure she gets lined up right. We got the bottom of the head all cleaned up, and oops, that is backwards. That would be something. Obviously the injector holes go towards the side with the injection pump, and I want to try to set it straight down. So I'm getting on those dowels. Then we'll put the bolts back in the order they came out, and I've just got an oil soaked rag. We're just dipping them in here. So I got all of them ran in loose. I'm just gonna, we're not snugging anything, we're just running them down the rest of the way with the ratchet. That way whenever we start off with the torque wrench, we're right into it. So instead of just telling us what the first torque is for the first sequence, it says 31% of specified torque. So it makes us do math here. So 14 foot-pounds on the first pass in sequence. I also need a way to know which ones I've done and haven't done, because I don't have the attention span to remember. So let's grab the Sharpie, and as I do one, I'll just put a dot next to it, and then when I go for the second pass, it'll be 2 dots. All right, we understand that concept. For one dot. And then round number 2, 62% of the specified torque, 28 foot-pounds, same sequence. And then the final sequence, this shows 45. So if you have the John Deere 755 Tech Manual, it has everything you need to know how to tear this whole tractor down, all the internals, the transmission, the pumps, everything you need. Except for the engine, because it's not a John Deere engine, it's a Yanmar engine. So I had to look up a Yanmar Tech Manual for this. So if you got the John Deere Tech Manual, you're gonna need the Yanmar to do the engine. Wasn't too hard to find though. This is when you hope everything stays righty-tighty and doesn't go to righty-loosey on you. Dot number 3. That's it. The head is bolted on and torqued down. I'm going to go ahead and just finger tight these injectors in. That way there's holes aren't open here, and then we can at least set the cover on overnight. And tomorrow I should have more time. We can get the rest of everything on. That's a new day. Still a little dusky out. That's nice. Trying to get it out a little bit early this morning. I got some other obligations later today. Next I want to go ahead and do the valves and rockers up top here. Got everything set up on this piece of foam. Got it going the same way as that one. So that is the front of the tractor, which is this side. By the way, as far as timing goes, it's all gears. Inside here, everything is gear driven inside that. So nothing's been changed internally there. So timing wise, we'll pull these out. I'm just going to dip in this oil. Some pretty thick oil. And then that oil will kind of run down there and sit inside that cam chaser or cam follower. I did roll all of these rods to make sure none of them are bent. So next on here, rocker arm assembly cap screw, 226 inch-pounds. Except I don't go up to 226 inch-pounds, so I had to convert that over to foot-pounds with an online calculator, which ended up being 18.3 foot-pounds. So next we're going to double check our lash on all our valves before we cover it up. Just like the classic inch-pounds or foot-pounds, when we're looking up stuff, we got to pay attention whether we're millimeters or inches. This is a millimeter tool. It says 0.2, which I don't know if you can make it out, but that is our 0.2 feeler gauge. And then we have exhaust and intake valves, and it is the same for both, right? Yes, it is the same for both. We want top dead center on the compression stroke. There is a timing mark right here, and the book says there's a timing mark here somewhere. Now we're going to spin this around and see if we can't locate that. If not, we'll just go off what the valves are doing. I don't see them working this thing anywhere. I think they're lying to me. So the other thing we can do is watch for the intake valve to open. Let me pull this injector out. Let me find something relatively clean to shove in that hole. And whenever this comes top dead center and this intake valve opens, that's top dead center on the intake stroke. We go one more revolution, and when this comes back top dead center, that should be top dead center on the compression stroke. Intake valve is opening. Cylinder's coming back up. Make sure we're not bonding on anything. Let's push it up, okay. Come back. So that should be, once it reaches max stroke, that should be top dead center on the compression stroke. We're going to run again just to make sure. Intake valve opening. We're coming up. Right there to the top. That should be top dead center on compression. Both valves are closed. Let me look at the manual again real quick, because if that's right, we're wildly excessive there. Pretty excessive. Which may explain why this thing always sounded like it wanted to launch to the moon. Maybe we just have a lot of extra chatter we didn't need. Let me check the book. We are on the 3TN, 0.2 millimeter. This is in fact millimeters, and that does in fact say 0.2. We found our moon launch noise. It looks like they just have a jam nut. Let's find a wrench that size. So we got a wrench for the jam nut, and then I need a flathead screwdriver. Not too much. That's about right. I've always been told just a little bit of drag. I don't want to pinch it. I don't want to clamp it. Just want a little bit of drag. Seems about right. And then we just repeat that step on the exhaust. Awesome. And then we just move down the line. We will slide that injector back in, making sure that copper crush ring's still sitting down there. And we just repeat those steps. Intake valve, top dead center, to compression, top dead center. Move our way back. We only have 3 cylinders, so it shouldn't take too long here. So next we're going to get the valve cover on. Kind of had it soaking, got it cleaned up just a little bit. It did come with a new gasket, so we'll just pick the old one out. And we got everything cleaned up on the engine side of things as well. New gasket, very nice. And rubber on our valve caps, valve cover caps. I'm showing 160 inch-pounds. I think the next thing I want to do, I want to get this bracket on the back, get this thing hanging from the hoist again, do the flywheel side of things. Get all this old RTV off of here. So that's cleaned up on the bottom at least. Easy place to do that. Let's see if we can get this thing hanging back from the hoist. So whenever my engine mounts failed, here and at the front, and gave this thing the freedom to just live its own life, it wore this main seal out right here. Now the seal comes out of this bracket, like that. And that rebuild kit that we got from Yanmar Diesel service did come with one, but I also have an OEM one from John Deere, and that's the one I'm going to use for this. There's the part number if you're looking for it. So I can't find anything on here, nor could I find any gaskets that are supposed to go between here and the block. However, we can all see that someone's been in this thing before and put some RTV on it. So I may put a little on there just to be on the safe side. I don't know why I would need it, but I can guarantee if I don't put it there, it's going to seep somehow. Also, there is a foam seal here on the outside that is supposed to be replaced, and we do have a new one of those, OEM from John Deere. There are two dowels right here. We're going to match up. All right, let's give that just a second. Definitely don't want to forget the oil pickup tube. That would be a bummer. And we'll go ahead and get the oil pan on because there's two bolts in the bottom of this that have to line up on the oil pan. So why we got everything kind of going together at the same time. That way we know it's all locked right. Fingers crossed the bolts for the oil pickup tube are just hanging out in here somewhere, because I don't have them. There's a little O-ring on there that's got to be in place, and it is, so that's good. It's got to go up in the little hole there. Can you imagine me getting this thing all back together and then looking over the table and there's the pickup tube sitting on top of the table? Oil pan all cleaned up and ready to go on. That should be the flywheel side. So the gasket that came with the kit doesn't fit on that pan. Looks like we're going to do a bit of RTV work on this as well. So before we run these up into the bottom of that, we got to get that torque back down. It's had a minute, so we can probably tighten it down. 96 inch-pounds is what I found for this one. Don't use any of these numbers if you're doing it. I'd look it up. I'd get the manual and verify. So we had the engine stand mounted to these holes. I'm going to get these bolts back in before we put the flywheel on. It does say to use new cap screws on the flywheel. We are not. You probably should. There is a dowel right there. There's a place for that dowel in the center. It is directional. You see the bolts, they go out obviously. I'm showing 61 foot-pounds. We're just going to go in a star pattern probably. What I need you to do is admire the cleverness of getting that tightened down. I also need you to forget that I forgot to put that seal on. So, if we could all collectively do that, I think that would be fun. There is no back set to this as far as depth goes. It's just we just drive it flush with that. Install seal with lip of seal towards cylinder block, which we did. Use driver disc A and B, we did not, to push seal even with surface of oil seal case. Flywheel round 2. Neat. And we're going to run the oil pan. It is 96 inch-pounds as well, except where it goes into the gear housing cover. That is 78, according to this here magic computer. So I'm just going to let you know we're going to get this on and torch, and that's going to be it as far as I got time. There's a couple things I forgot to order, and I didn't notice until I started putting this back together. Filter bowl housing being one of them. I also want to add an oil pressure gauge and an actual temp gauge to this thing. It's got a temp gauge when it gets too hot and oil pressure gauge when it gets too low, but I'd like to actually get an actual reading on things. And a couple other little odds and ends. So I'm going to get that stuff ordered, and once that comes in, we'll finish getting this buttoned up. But we've definitely made some phenomenal progress. I mean, we've got an engine put back together. We've got the engine mounts. Tomorrow on the YouTube yacht, I'm going to be doing some interior framing with some of the curved walls and the stair opening. I've got a big plumbing order coming in later next week, which is when we'll start running the secondary stuff out from the yacht like we talked about. And once that secondary stuff is ran out, then we're going to get the gravel to get the drive and the parking area polished up, and that's when I need this tractor for. So that should time out really well as far as when the parts come in. That's it. Just tightening down oil pan bolts. Can't thank you guys enough for watching, and hopefully we get to catch you on the next one, because it is some more fun on the yacht.